And now it's time to figure out a radiator solution. I've got the radiator up there. I've got this old radiator bracket, and I've got a really tight area to put a radiator in. I'll be honest, I genuinely don't know where this is going to rest, but I think I might have to cut out those two old radiator supports. I think this is too tall, and this might be just enough laying down. I'll be honest, that's a lot of radiator to fit in this engine bay. Yeah. I'm gonna have to get real creative here. Kind of come up with a new plan now for the radiator, and I'm actually going to end up reusing these brackets, just turning them at a different angle, so then I can lay the radiator kind of flat in there. And then I have that piece of angle iron down there on the floor, obviously. And I should be able to bolt it to the sides of these fins and slide her in somewhere around that, and then it'll lay pretty low, and that should end up working out. Kind of mocked them up here where I think they might go. I think I'm gonna put the hood on before I actually do any of this, because I want to make sure that the radiator is even gonna fit in this spot. Either way, even if it didn't, I'd probably be able to get a shorter radiator so it's not as long, but I think this might work out. And for those of you wondering, the hood does not fit well, but it fits. It does touch the engine right about here, or somewhere in here, right there. So it causes this middle section to pop up, but the edges are fine. The front is lifted, so it doesn't look super great, but I might be able to raise the chrome bumper up a little bit just to make up for that huge gap. Well, I now have got the hood on. It doesn't fit great, as you can see somewhere right about there. It hits the front of this valve cover, which is not a big deal. I'm just gonna raise the front end a little bit more, bring the back end down. It'll make this joint kind of bad looking, but it'll make it fit, so I'll deal with that. The front will be kind of large. Also, not a big deal, as I have a different engine in here. Now I'm going to be mocking up the radiator, because this is a big radiator. I wanted to get the bonnet, or the hood, whatever you guys want to call it. I want to get that on, so then I know where the radiator needs to go. Got me a piece of wood propping it up, and also a safety net, just in case I knock the wood down. That would really suck if I'm in the engine bay, got my head in there, and it decided to fall, so safety rope, big deal there. And now I think how I was gonna mount it up is exactly how it's gonna end up working out. And just like that, I got them both welded on. This one was a lot easier and more simple. My welds look pretty decent. And this one, for some reason, was a major pain. I'm not entirely sure why. Obviously, I covered the wire with some steel so that I wouldn't melt through it, but this weld looks horrible because I had to weld it like 2 or 3 times just to get it to bond, and it's there, but it looks kind of ugly. And now I'm just using these little rubber grommets inside of each one to dampen vibrations and whatnot. It's not a whole lot, but it will help. Come to the realization that I can't just put this piece of angle iron on here, because that would basically ruin any dampening that I'm getting from these little rubber grommets. So I'm actually going to notch out the angle of the steel, about the width of these, so then it's not touching on this and then also bolted to it. So if I notch out the angle in which the width of this is, it won't touch it. Well, the plan is coming together very slowly, but this is kind of the idea. Got bolts through the grommets. The grommet is on both sides, obviously, and then there is a nut on the back side with a large washer. And this thing, it's obviously not tightened down all the way, just finger tight, but now it gives a little bit of a vibration dampening, and it also gives a little flex. Not a whole lot, but just enough. I don't really like that this kind of moves, but I don't think the radiator is going to be that heavy. Plus, I will probably have a third radiator mount. Strap up here. I changed the setup just a tiny bit. Before I had these more rubber grommets between the radiator and the bracket that I made, but I didn't really like that. It was too loose. So I ended up cutting a piece of steel and then putting a piece of rubber. Actually, this is a piece of steel from the angle iron. And then I put a piece of silicone between those two. So there's a little give again, but it's definitely a lot more sturdy than it was. And I'm sure some of you guys are gonna be like, but Mason, the radiator cap is now the lowest point, or not the lowest point, but not the highest point in the system. That's where this guy comes in. And I'm gonna attach that right there. So then I have the highest point in the system, and it's easier to burp out air rather than trying to jack the front of the car up and then getting that to be the highest point. Now I could do that, but then if I had to do a roadside repair, I wouldn't really be able to do that as easily. So I'd rather just have this there instead. It's now the next day, and obviously I can't use this blue straight hose for the lower radiator because if you can't see there, it's already got a little bit of a kink in it, so I can't go much more than that angle, and obviously this angle is like a 90 degree, so this was out of the question. I ended up going to O'Reilly's. Not sponsored by them, but I went there, obviously, and picked up a couple of radiator hoses that I think will work for it. I just have to throw a coupler on there, which this pack has the right size coupler. And one of these, I think this one can go somewhere like on that. I'm gonna have to trim both of these. I probably won't be using very much of this guy, but the 90 degree is what I bought it for. And this one I can snake under here, shorten the end of this, stick it on there, and it should fit right in there. We'll see how that works. Bada boom, bada bing. Something that looks kind of like that. Obviously there's no radiator clamps on it or anything like that, but this is how it's gonna look. It's not gonna rub on any metal or nothing, even if the motor twists a little bit. So I am super pleased with the outcome. Unfortunately I did have to use a coupler, but that kind of just is what it is, since I can't just design a hose to fit here. I wish I could, but I think that's about as good as it's gonna look. Yes, which is, this says coolant oil catch can. I don't really know what a coolant oil catch can is, because your coolant and oil should not be mixing. But obviously I'm using this for my radiator overflow. I was skeptical of Evil Energy products at first, but this actually feels like a pretty solid canister. Like, this feels like a one-piece lid. It feels like it's machined like billet, but I don't know for sure. But I know that it was relatively cheap and feels high quality, so I'm happy with that. And this will be catching the coolant overflow, obviously. I don't really like the color of the hose, but it came with it. Might use it, might not use it, I don't know. I've got my radiator bottle here, and I should be able to, let's see if I can get you guys a better angle. I should be able to mount it right about here, because there's a screw right here that I might be able to utilize, and then either lift it up or push it down. And I need to decide whether it's going to fit with the hood here, so I'm just going to mount it in that screw. And with that, that's where I'm gonna end this video. I'm pretty happy with the progress so far. Hood fits okay, radiator fits good, all the hoses and stuff are all plumbed up, along with new radiator cap, because I gotta pull, I gotta be able to burp the system from the highest point, and this is the highest point. And then I also added the cap down there, or not the cap, but the overflow. And if you guys liked the video, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. It goes a long way for me, and I will see you in the next one.